Alright, so I left off in the last video kind of going through a really quick and rough overview of the UI of Blueprint over here. And now what we're going to do is we're just going to go ahead and get started. I mean, the best way for you to learn how to use Blueprint is to watch somebody create a blueprint in real time in front of you. So I'm going to do something a little bit different. I'm going to totally freestyle this. I'm not going to stop the video and kind of prepare or review what I'm going to go over. And the reason I'm doing that is so that you can see when I mess up, so you can see when I do things incorrectly, and most importantly, so you can see how I fix those things. Because Blueprint, when you're working with it, it's a lot of trial and error. It's a lot of thinking of an idea of something cool that you want to do, right? First you think about it. So let's say, for example, you think about, well, I want the player to be able to have a rocket launcher, and I want a player to dual wield 2 rocket launchers, and I want them to be able to shoot these things at like 500 rounds a minute, and I want this animation to play when you're shooting it, and I want these particle effects to happen when you shoot it, these cool sparks and fire and smoke and stuff. So the idea is to first think of an idea, and once you think of it, you start to plan it out. And you can plan it out a couple of ways. Now, when I'm doing something really simple in Blueprint, like this door, for example, I'll typically just freestyle it because it's something so simple to do compared to other more complex things in game development that you can kind of keep track of it in your head. And something that I like to do when I work with Blueprint, this may sound pretty weird, but actually a lot of people do this, and it's actually really helpful. Might be weird at first, but trust me, try it. It's very helpful. Talk to yourself. Talk out loud, even if you're by yourself in front of your workstation. As you create your blueprint, talk out loud so you can hear your ideas and get a good idea of what direction you need to go in and what's the next step. Because what will happen a lot when doing blueprints, and you actually see this as I create this from scratch again, is that you'll set something up and you'll think that it's going to work, and then it doesn't work. And that's okay. That's actually normal. That's actually beneficial, because what happens is you'll hook something up, it doesn't work. Maybe the door doesn't open. Maybe the door opens in the wrong direction. Maybe the door explodes. Who knows, right? But when this stuff happens, it's good, because then you go back to the blueprint and you kind of go, let me retrace my steps and figure out what went wrong. And then what will happen is eventually you'll fix it. It may take you 30 seconds to figure it out. It may take you 30 minutes. I've actually had created complex blueprints that have taken me a couple of days to put together, working late into the night and stuff. And that's okay. It's a lot of fun. It's really interesting to do. One thing I will say while working on blueprints is that you need to kind of open your mind. And what I mean by that is you have to think outside the box, and you have to think very, very logically, because Blueprint is a visual scripting system, and that basically means that it's a visual system of programming. So when you're using Blueprint, you have to think like a programmer. Now, don't freak out when I say that. It doesn't mean that you have to know how to code C++ or JavaScript or anything like that. What it means is that you have to think of problems logically. So let me give you an example. We have to create a door, right? The door has to be able to detect when the player walks up to it or is in proximity of the door itself. So that's one thing we need to take care of. Detecting the player in proximity of the door. When we do that, the door needs to open. So we need some way of telling the door to move. But then we also need a way of telling the door to move from point A to point B. Point A being the closed position, point B being the new open position. And what does a door do when it opens? It just moves. It just slides. It either slides left or right or top to bottom, but it gets out of the way. So we need a way of telling Unreal, when you detect the player in front of the door needs to be able to move, and it has to move in this direction at this speed at this time. Then when we walk away from the door, whether we go through the door or not, we need to be able to tell Unreal, hey, once the player gets far enough away from the door and is out of proximity of the door, out of the proximity sensor, so to speak, go ahead and close the door. So what does that involve? We need to be able to tell the door to move again. We need to tell the door to move from the open position now to the closed position. Okay? We need to tell the door what speed to close at. Alright? So these are all different things that we need to do. And we also need to be able to tell the door, hey, you know what? If the player changes his mind and he turns around and walks back to the door and gets in proximity of it again, the door needs to be able to do the whole process again and open. And if the player walks away from the door, goes through it, and gets further, far enough away from it, the door needs to, again, close. So we need to tell Unreal to do all that stuff. Now, to you and me as people, we're really smart. We're way smarter than computers and software, at least until Skynet goes online sometime in the future. But for now, we're the smartest entity, or not entity, but we're smarter than computers, put it that way. Okay? So when you talk to Unreal or any game engine, you're going to have to talk nice and slowly, and you're going to have to explain every single step of the process of whatever it is you're trying to tell Unreal to do. Okay? It's kind of like talking to a little baby. Unreal is pretty smart, but it doesn't understand what you want to do. It doesn't know your game idea that's inside of your imagination. So we need to be able to take that idea and communicate it to Unreal so that Unreal can do really cool stuff, which is what it's good at, right? And that's what Blueprint is. Blueprint is like, I guess Blueprint to Unreal is what French is to France. You want to go to France and have a good time? You should probably know how to speak French, or you're going to get lost a lot and you're going to be confused most of the time. Same thing with Unreal. If we jump into Unreal, we want to make a game, we don't know a thing about Blueprint, we don't even bother learning it, we're not going to have a good time. So let's go ahead and start to build stuff. So we'll start off pretty simple. Before we build anything, we don't have anything to build with. If I go to the components window, it's completely empty. There's nothing in this blueprint. Now we're trying to create a super door. In order to have a super door, we need an actual door. But you can't have a door without a door frame. So let's go ahead and create that first. How do we add a door frame to this blueprint, to this empty little blueprint universe? Well, it's pretty easy. We're going to come over here to the components window. And what we can do is we can go to add a component. So we've got all these different categories here for different things. And what these are, they're components. So what are components? One way to think of components is if Blueprint was a car in a garage that you were putting together, Blueprint would be the car itself. A component would be the front left wheel, the steering wheel, an ashtray, the stereo system, the back seats, headlights, the engine. All those different things are components that make up the car. These components on the left are the different sort of ingredients that we can throw into this blueprint. So some examples are we can throw in audio assets, we could throw in skeletal meshes, we could throw in static mesh, we could throw in particle systems, we can throw in lights, we can throw in cameras, lots of different things. Basically, so much stuff that you could probably come up with an unlimited combinations of potential blueprints to create. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a static mesh. So I'll click on static mesh, and I'm going to go ahead and rename this. So you can rename it up here, or you can rename it down here where it says variable name. It's the same thing. So let's rename this. I'm going to call this door frame, and I like to put underscore mesh at the end, because once I start having a lot of variables, and we'll talk about that later, once you have a long list of this stuff, it's very convenient to be able to look at the name, just scan it with your eyes in a half second, and be able to know, oh, that's a mesh, that's a particle system, that's this, that's that, just by looking at it real quick and observing the name. Okay? So now we'll see that the name changed up here to door frame mesh. Now we don't have anything associated with this, it's still blank. So how do we do that? It's pretty easy. I'm going to go to the content browser, and I'm going to go to meshes, and there's nothing here. So let me go to, I'm going to go up to game, and I'm going to use one of my filters here. I'm going to use a static mesh filter. And there's a whole bunch of static meshes. There we go. So here's a door frame, and here's a door. So I'm going to take the door frame. If you're wondering where I got this stuff from, again, in the previous video, I showed going to the Unreal Wiki, to the Blueprint door tutorial, and there's a zip file you can download from there that contains all these assets. So I'm not going to go over that again. So I'm going to select that door frame. I'm going to jump back to my super door blueprint, and I'm going to go down here. Make sure you have this selected, door frame. If you don't have it selected, you won't see anything there, so click on that. That'll open up the details. So go down to where it says static mesh. It's going to say none by default. What I'm going to do is I'm going to click on this little arrow icon, and that's going to load up the door frame. You can see it right there in the little thumbnail swatch. Alright, so cool. So we got ourselves a door frame, and if I hit F to frame in on this, you'll see, voila, there's my door frame. Pretty cool. So we got a door frame, but we don't have a door. That could be a little bit of a problem, unless we want just an empty door frame, which is not what we want. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and right click, and before I do that, I'm going to go back to the content browser. I'm going to click and select the door. I'm going to jump back to the blueprint. I'm going to go to add component. I'm going to go to static mesh, and this time you see that the door's name is in parentheses right here. I'm going to click on that, and you'll see that the door is automatically added. In case you're wondering why that happened, it happened because I selected that door mesh in the content browser. When you select the static mesh in the content browser and then you add a static mesh in the blueprint, as long as that object is selected in the content browser, it'll automatically be linked to this component inside of your blueprint, which is pretty cool. So I'm going to rename this, and I'm going to call this door. And following my naming convention rule, I'm going to call it door_mesh. That's going to make it very easy to organize this stuff. So that's pretty much it. So now we have a door, and we have a door frame. Okay, so that's pretty cool. Let me jump back into the graph view real quick and show you something. If we look over here where it says my blueprint, you're going to notice that under variables we have two. We have door mesh and door frame mesh. Pretty cool. Those are our components. They got added to our blueprint, so they show up over here, which is pretty cool. We'll go over that in a moment. Let's go back and keep building this thing. So next thing we need to do is we need to add some way for our blueprint to detect when the player walks up to the door. So we've got ourselves a door, but it's not going to work right now. And I'll actually show you that. I'm going to save this. I'm going to jump back into my scene here. I'm going to take this door, the one that's actually working and completed, I'm going to delete it. I'm going to jump back to the content browser, go to my, I'm going to get rid of this filter. I'm going to go to my super door blueprint. I'm going to jump back into the map, right click. I'm going to add the super door. There it is. I'm going to rotate it around. Okay. So here's our super door. Pretty cool. What I'm going to do is I'm going to jump into the game, and we're going to walk up to the door and see what happens. So I walk up to the door, trying to walk through it, can't. It's in my way, it's closed. And what do you know? The dang door doesn't want to open. Very stubborn door. Well, the reason is we haven't told it to do anything. See, Unreal has to be explicitly told what to do, just like any other game engine. It's a computer. It's a system, machine, Skynet. Anyway, we have to tell Unreal every step of the process. So I'm going to end this video here because it's gone on for almost 15 minutes now. I'm going to end this video, and in the next one I'm going to show you how to tell Unreal how we detect the player so that we can open this door finally and get through here and get out of this weird little box world.